Thank you. Yes. Yes, go on. Yeah. Hmm. I'm not hearing you. Yeah.
Yes. Dennis Shabaldi Reviews. Mr. Jagdeo, could you say to what extent, what is the status of the Curlew midstream bulk oil storage facility that was announced earlier this year? How much did the PEP spend in its election campaign? And thirdly, how much seed capital will be put into the development bank, and how will it be sustainable if it's going to be interest-free? Because that's what we were told initially that it will be interest-free.
Yeah. So we're thinking about a seed capital of $200 million, but it would be put in phases. So the first year may be a smaller sum, but about 200 million, and then we'll assess the demand as we move from there. But the idea is 200 million US dollars.
All from the government?
Yes, from the government. From the government. It's strange that you are now asking me, as General Secretary of the party, how much we spend on an election campaign. And you published a story several weeks ago, and now the whole world, for 2 weeks of think that we spent $5 billion. I'd like to ask you, where did you get the $5 billion from that we spent? And how did you come up with 5? Where did you get that figure from, Dennis?
Well, I'm not here to answer your question, sir.
No, yeah, well, exactly. You see, so you can publish anything you wish, and I can't ask you where you got that figure from.
I wouldn't disclose my source, sir.
Yes, you wouldn't disclose. So that's what people do. You hide behind sources. If I were to come here every time and hide behind a source, then nothing, we'd never find the truth. You could publish a blatant lie like that and say you can't disclose your source. This is a blatant lie. I will make known the figure later, but I would love if you tell the country how you came up with $5 billion. $5 billion is probably, we didn't spend much more than APNU. So let that be your guide. We didn't spend much more than the 300 million that APNU spent.
Including the advantage of incumbency and the use of those resources?
300 million, that's something totally different. Now you're at me including the incumbency.
And that was also referenced in the story.
So the thing is that you are, so this is a clever way of misguiding people, misleading. So you just asked me how much we spent. You put a figure that the PPP spent $5 billion on an election campaign. You can't tell me what the source is because it's protected sources. I just told you we spent approximately just more than what APNU spent, but not in greater magnitude. Now you're coming in with, the advantage of incumbency. But the advantage of incumbency is there for everyone. So it was there for APNU when they were in government. When Granger went with the helicopter everywhere and flew around, and Ramjatan said, there's an advantage to incumbency. Why are you complaining? You expect the president to walk? So now we have to cost that. It wasn't costed then. the media, belaboring the point about access to media houses and stuff like that, the government dominating the government-owned or public sector media. Did that disadvantage? How much do you think that cost? $10 billion? We launched a digital campaign because the newspapers are now reaching anyone. We didn't advertise in the newspapers much. Nobody reads the newspapers. And our digital campaign cost us unbelievably low sum. We spent less on our digital campaign and our total advertising budget now, this time around in 2025, than we did in 2020. Because 2020 we focused heavily on the newspapers, because the newspapers were their prices are very high. But it is just a blatant lie. A blatant lie. And it passes off just like that. How do you expect us to react? If the president gets angry with a story like that, is it because he's hostile to the media? It's not hostile. Should we just sit down and accept it as a fact when it's a lie? This is the problem we're talking about. And that's what earlier I said. Starbuck News was the one pushing the minority government. Now we won with a whopping majority, and they're now saying, oh, we didn't reach expectation. We didn't reach up to the 2/3 expectation. We never said 2/3. So make it seem as though we had set ourselves a target of 2/3 and we didn't reach it. We failed. This is what I'm doing. Curlew, the last I know of it was we were at a stage where we were negotiating. There were some major differences in the terms of the deal. We could not conclude the deal before the elections, and then we put it on pause. We have to re-engage with Curlew and others to ensure that the objectives are met. And we'll only sign up to an agreement that protects Guyana in the long term, but that yields significant short-term benefits to our country. And what we were seeking to do was through procurement in bulk through Curlew, and then a tank farm in Guyana, so you can store more fuel here to cut the price of procurement of fuel between 20% to about 35%. And that's entirely doable. If we can do that, although we have the lowest gasoline and diesel price in the Caribbean because of the government subsidy, we can get that price even further down. Significantly down. Because we'll be able to procure our fuel cheaper. And that is the essence of the deal. If an agreement doesn't deliver that, that is the benefit to us through lower procurement costs and protects us in the long run, we're not going to sign it. So we have our lawyers working on this, and we are not going to be very convenient to sign things today that will harm our country 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I mean, we're not going to be rushed into signing any agreement. You saw what APNU did with the 2016 PSA. They were advised not to sign it overnight. Truckman went and signed it. We're stuck with the consequences of it up to today. So that's where we are with Curlew. We would do all of the due diligence, and we'll make sure that the agreement, when concluded, and if we can conclude it, protects the people of Guyana.
Mr. Jagdeo, on the element of the development bank, you did not answer the question about how do you ensure sustainability if the resources that will be dispersed will be interest-free.
Yes, so the thing is that we anticipate, we've looked at the models around the world, like the Grameen Bank and stuff. These are micro loans, and they had a higher repayment rate than even commercial banks in some countries. So definitely you're going to have some, maybe a percentage of the loans that will go bad. This is realistically speaking. But we anticipate that if you work with the businesses themselves in a hand-holding fashion, that you'd be able to get the loan repaid and the money can be revolved. You know, the money can go into a revolving fund. And then with periodic injections from the government over period, as your revenue grows, you can periodically inject more capital into the bank. So access to the financing comes with the software that I mentioned before the elections. That is the party and the government working to ensure that we do a lot of training, financial literacy training, hand-holding through mentorship, working to make sure that each of these companies that would access a loan have technical advice, marketing advice. So it comes as a package deal. So you will be able to ensure, you would know immediately whether this is a viable project or not if you go through that whole process. I think it would do well. But definitely, like in every system, you'd have maybe a 10% failure rate. It happens globally.
Kiana Wilberg for Starting Point. Dr. Jagdeo, you spoke about how the government intends to leverage a portion of the oil resources to back the development bank.
Yeah.
And you also spoke about the housing sector, 40,000 homes, and reaching out to those members of the public who may be facing constraint with construction. I wanted to talk a little bit about how the government, and if my interpretation of this is correct, the government using these particular strategies as means of transferring the wealth from the oil sector as opposed to direct cash transfers on a frequent basis. And what are the pros and cons of that approach?
So over the last few days, I saw this injustice that was done to Minister Vikram Bharrat, where the focus was that he said something to the effect that cash transfers are a failed model. And then a number of hostile forces to us extended the meaning of that to mean that, to create the interpretation that we are backing away from all the commitments we made in the election period and before the election period. So the model for development of our families, individuals, that is Guyanese, families or our country, does not focus only on cash transfer. Cash transfer is not a model. Cash transfer is one element of the model. We made it clear that we want to invest in every Guyanese through higher education spending and through greater opportunities to our people to have a high quality education. Every single one of them. From the child that starts at kindergarten all the way to university. And you have seen the government invest in this vision, in this sector significantly. 53 billion to 185 billion in the last term. We have moved to do a number of things. Pay for exams, made university education free, more scholarships. All of these will continue. We're going to give parents more choices in these next 5 years. The digital school, upgrading the curriculum using AI, ensuring that we can personalize the curriculum for individual kids based on their aptitude at different ages, because that changes. A lot of that work is being done now. We're going to continue ensuring that we pay for scholarships for people. We're going to be assisting families now with the transportation grant and other things. School feeding programs, enhancing the quality of it. All of these things we promised. That's one element of the model. If you can invest in people through education, then you can ensure long-term sustainability. The oil resources will disappear, but good education can only create more value in the future. It's up to people now to make use of these opportunities. So instead of the opposition talking all day about cash grant alone, they should be saying, please make sure that you study. Use the opportunities provided by the government of Guyana fully. Or go to university, ensure you're trained, get a skill. Go ensure that you are familiar with artificial intelligence. That would be a constructive opposition. Now, all day they focus on cash grant as the model, when it's not the model. That's the first element of the model. The second element is healthy people. Educated people, healthy people. Massive investments, again, in healthcare across the country. I'm not going to repeat all of the initiatives that we're working on. The third element is jobs, getting good jobs and higher paying jobs for people, and allowing people to keep more money in their pockets. So that means having a positive investment for climate for investments. Making sure that the taxation system evolves in a way that rewards hard work by allowing people to keep more money in their pockets, that's, as we said. Lowering, so those are the two elements of it, which is what we're working on. That's a third element of the model. Because if you have good education, you're healthy, you need a good job that you can earn. You need to get more money to save or to meet your family need. The third element is ownership, home ownership, which is what we're promoting. That's the fourth element, rather. The fourth element of the model is home ownership. Ownership of other things, like a vehicle. That's why we want to reduce the taxes. Home ownership will assist you to build homes. We would invest in homes through the government itself, and then, bring in, ensure, like what we've done in the past, people get a mortgage, and then they pay back for their homes, because the seed capital comes from the government. That's the fourth element of it. Then we have more transfers to people. The transfers will take place in the form of higher pension, more money for the children through the cash grant, public assistance, helping people with disability, helping single parents, and also the cash transfer from the oil and gas sector. That's one element, a small element of the model, ensuring people have more recreational facilities, live in nicer communities and, with better roads. They are secure. That's another element of the model. That's why these security cameras. Those are the key elements of the model that we are talking about. They only focus on cash grant because they know some people only want the money. They only want the money, and we are not into that. So every commitment we made in relation to the cash grant, we will keep. We haven't withdrawn any commitment, notwithstanding what they said, Minister Vikram said. But the model of development for Guyanese and our households and our country is not cash grant model. It's a different model with various elements that will change people's lives for the better. That is the model the PPP and the government are pushing.
Dr. Jagdeo, just to
Yes.
the second question. The president this morning at GCCI event spoke extensively about two particular things. One, the government leveraging data centers and Guyana becoming this data hub for the Caribbean. What sort of revenue stream or revenue opportunity are you looking to tap by keeping your eyes focused on this particular avenue? And secondly, the president also spoke about the need to work with the private sector to bring crude marketing services at home. How much savings are you looking to tap where that is concerned? Why can you underscore the importance of that particular approach?
So when the president speaks to the different audiences that he often addresses, he is selling a vision. And the government cannot do all of these things because what the government is doing is creating an enabling regime for these things to happen. If you look at our manifesto, we speak about the enabling regime. So we can, through co-investment, through lower taxation, through skill training, through probably some other measures that maybe infrastructure investment, we can then encourage the private sector to invest in these areas because these are areas that will generate sustainable income in the future. And remember, we're speaking about a diversified economy. We're speaking about identifying new growth poles for the income of the future and the jobs of the future. So we don't want all of our eggs in the oil and gas basket. So when the president speaks about data center, he's just tapping into a trend globally where countries are competing now to have data centers in their country, particularly energy-rich countries, because it brings them significant advantages in the digital world. And so we don't want to be excluded here in Guyana. So who best to pick this up? It's the private sector that has to run with these ideas, but he wants them to know that his government is receptive to supporting investments in these areas. Similarly, when he spoke about the training of people to trade our crude, but in many cases, a lot of the private sector entities, local entities, in some parts of the world, so you have like in UAE, ADNOC and others who trade the crude, and they have great deal of capacity to do that because they study crude market and they have expertise in crude market. We don't have that as yet. So we have opted for a very transparent mechanism where we have public tenders out, and people bid on marketing our crude for 1-year duration contracts. And that's how we've operated in the 5 years, and it's transparent. And the one that gives you the company that is, of course, pre-qualified and have good standing, that gives you the highest return, that's the one you take. And we have done that, and we have kept away from scandal. But we may be able to get a premium if we trade our own crude. And so we are going to start developing our domestic capacity to trade crude, but it requires knowledge of the market, and a team of technical people who are very aware of this very complicated crude market. And it's very, very complicated market out there. So he has signaled that we are moving in that direction. It's not going to happen tomorrow because we don't have that capacity. But the private sector itself may be able to develop some capacity there. So maybe they can sell services to the government in this regard, technical expertise in that area. So when you listen to their speeches, they're not about what the government is doing itself. Because in Guyana, every time the government speaks, people think, oh, they're investing in that. The government has a role as an enabler of investments too. And that is what we've been pushing. Yes.
Marcel Thomas, the Starbrook News. I just wanted a clarification on one thing and then two questions. On the gun license, was it hypothetical? You're saying that you don't want it to have a backlog of 30 to 50,000
No,
or there is 30 to 50,000 applications?
So right now, that is, from what I'm told, I thought it's 30,000. I just left the meeting and they told me it's much more. And so those are people who've applied for a license already. Now just imagine if you have to give out 50,000 gun licenses in Guyana. What could happen? And often the weapons end up in the hands of criminals because they come into a home and they take the weapons, etc. So we do have to think about how we can give people some way of protecting themselves, but maybe a non-lethal way of protecting, and be very liberal with that and be very sparing with the gun licenses. But let the system be transparent so that you don't have to go, people don't have claims they have to pay somebody for a gun license, or they have to, every day they're running you down wherever you go. I want an upgrade on my gun, I want this. That dominates sometimes half of the time you spend in community meetings. After the meetings, people come and they talk about their gun licenses. And so you can't get to the real issue of, development and education and health and all of that. So, and I know it bothers a lot of people, and a lot of people complain too because they've been waiting for many, many years. So we have to find a way of addressing this, and the president is looking into it. Personally, he's looking into this matter to devise a system that would allow us to be responsive to people, but without putting 50,000 guns in the hands of people. So those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. So for example, when people are denied access to the public assistance and they have a visible sign of disability, it's clearly, something is clear to me that the board of guardians who deny that person, they're just messing around. And often the people, they don't have recourse to anyone else, so they have to wait until the president goes to a community. Like I remember once, the president went to Essequibo Coast, and there was a young guy, visibly disabled. And The president said, put him on the public assistance. He complained to the president, couldn't get on. Several months later, I went to the charity, and he was not. So I called, and they were saying, oh, he had to go back through, imagine, he had to go back through the local board of guardians. And I used some expletives, but that's the kind of thing. It shouldn't have to await the president or a minister going to a community to solve that problem. They should have immediately, if you can't get past the local board of guardians, the appeal board must be, people have recourse to an appeal board. And the appeal board doesn't report to the PS or the minister, directly to the president, sends a report once every quarter to the president. That we've had 500 appeals, we've gone through it, we've examined it carefully, the people met all the metrics, and we have approved 200 and we have denied the 300. Because, sometimes everyone wants to get onto the public assistance. So that sort of system, when you put that in place, people have recourse, and they don't have to wait until you go to a community. When you go to community meetings, you see a long line and waiting to see the president or someone else. And often it's these problems. We're hoping, like the NIS one, people who have contributions over 500 will get their payoff, but didn't make 750 because we set aside 10 billion. Not many people have utilized it as yet. We hope they would now utilize it. They will get their one-off a grant, a substantial grant, I must say, and they would receive something. And that we have a system to quickly identify and pay out benefits to those who are above the 250. And then the NIS pension, which hadn't been increased significantly in the last term, the old age pension was increased. We doubled old age pension in the last term. We promised to increase NIS pension. And so NIS can't do that on its own. NIS is not government. The money is not government money. So we promised to make injections from the Treasury into the NIS so they can increase their NIS pension. So in the budget, you will see some money put in the budget to be given to the NIS so they can then start implementing that promise that we made. So this is how we'll approach some of these matters.
My substantive questions. One, same cash grant, but
Yes.
it's the announcement during the campaign where the president had said that government was mulling a second cash grant possibly before Christmas. My question is, has this been decided on as yet? Has a concretized decision been made? Will there be a cash grant before Christmas?
Whatever the president said on the campaign trail will be done. Whatever the president said on the campaign trail would be done. We are a party. Once we say things, we get it done. We're very tight with making promises, but once we say it, it will be done. Whatever the president said on the campaign trail, he said he was mulling it. I'm glad you said he was mulling it. He didn't say, like on the other things, there shall be, but he said, I'm mulling it. But there will be, and this is a 5-year term we have. There'll be several cash grants in the 5 years. So don't worry about it. There are 5 years term. This is not a 3 months term that we have now. We haven't even started the 5 years as yet.
No, but he said mulling before Christmas.
Mulling, yes,
I'm
mulling.
asking.
He's mulling, yeah.
Has a decision been
Yeah,
made on the
but the
Christmas?
thing is that whatever the president said, I told you, will be delivered. But the thing is that we're not in for 3 months in office. We're in office till 2031.
Yeah, we know that, but you haven't said yes or no.
Yeah, no. But I just told you whatever the president said. The president is a man of his word. All right, when Marcel is done. Marcel, not Marcel. Marcel has the microphone.
And the president, he made a brief announcement this morning that there will be enhancements to the current stock exchange. We don't even really have a stock exchange to speak, just basically trading in shares, and that there'll be a junior stock exchange. I wanted you to give a bit more insight into this and how this is going to be done and the purpose.
So the stock exchange in Guyana is private. It's a privately owned stock exchange, like New York Stock Exchange. So many people do not know that. The Securities Council, the regulatory body, is appointed by the government, but the exchange is private. So a lot of people, to list on the exchange, there is a fee, like anywhere in the world. So you'd recall one time Banks DIH, Mr. Rees, mentioned about the stock exchange not working. And then the stock exchange said, they're not listed. Banks is not even listed because they have to pay a fee. So to get an exchange working, the government can put in place the regulatory regime. We have a long time now we passed the Securities Exchange Act. We can have in place the council as we have. But to get volumes traded through the exchange, you have to have the companies, the public companies, listing on the exchange. So that means getting more companies to go public, because the majority of our companies are private companies, and that's private in the sense of the number of shareholders that they have, and many of them do not want to list on the exchange. So the only way we could get an exchange that is very vibrant is if you get more companies to go public and to then pay a fee to get listed on the exchange. Another way of doing this is to have some government instruments traded on the exchange. So we had already indicated that we may want to siphon off from the oil and gas sector some of the most lucrative opportunities that we see on the right year return for those the investors in those companies, create the share structure of the companies, and then maybe if we want volume to be traded, list those on the exchange. So what I mean, for example, take the fertilizer plant that we want to do. After we complete the energy project, there'd be a second energy project there, and then a fertilizer plant. We put that in a company. We create a share structure and allow Guyanese to buy shares in that company. Maybe limited to, say, 100 shares per person, because you want to have more people own shares. So teachers, fishermen, nurses, everybody can own shares. You guarantee a 10% return on those shares, which is unusual because normally it's based on the performance of the company. But to give a sweetener, the government can underwrite it. And then have those shares listed on the exchange, the company listed on the exchange, so that people can then sell. So if you buy 100 shares at $10 each, $1,000, and then you get on the exchange, you list it, and another person wants to buy it. But we have to look at concentration, because one person may want to buy out all the shares. But if you're getting, say, $500 per share, you're going to get a significant amount of money. You're going to get, what, 500,000 now? If from a $1,000 investment. right? So that kind of thing. That's the way it would work. Because a lot of these exchanges, you can put the regulatory system in place. But a lot of depends on the people who use the exchange. And a lot of the private companies in Guyana don't want to use the exchange because going public means they have to publish every few months. They have to publish their records. You know, you have audited statements and all of that. And then some people don't want that type of scrutiny. So we can put in place again. And so I think when the president spoke of this, he was hoping that the private sector would also make full use of the opportunity. We are prepared to address any regulatory matter that would enable this to happen. We are prepared to create the incentive for this to happen. But then it's up to the private sector to make use of it. And a lot of them lament that they can't get loans or because they're stretched to the limit. But this is one way of raising capital outside of going to the formal banking system. You can raise capital either through a loan or getting equity, you know, like trading shares in the company. So I think that was the idea.
Mr. Jagdeo,
Yes.
follow up on the cash grant question. One of the things that is being said in the public domain is that the cash grant will no longer be per person, but will be per household.
Who said this?
That is what many members of the public are saying.
No, but many members of the public don't determine. This is
No,
again.
that's what I'm asking.
Let me tell you how something like that starts. A useless partisan goes on a program like with Globespan and other useless show that was talking about PVP minority government, and he says this is what the government is contemplating doing. Never spoke with a single individual in the government. Can spread a rumor just like that, and then that's how it comes out. The media now find out people are thinking about household. There's been no such discussion at any level in the government. So it's a blatant lie, but this is what happens all the time is disinformation. Every day it's deliberate and people don't have anything to do. Like some of these people who are like, what else would a partisan do now? What else would a partisan or I don't know who the others, they're just like a David Hines, except spread rumors. They have nothing productive to say. This is a blatant lie. We've never made no such decision.
On the question of rice and paddy prices, will government consider buying the paddy and or the rice at a higher price and providing that rice because it's surplus to, say, Haiti, where there is a grave humanitarian crisis with food supply? And secondly, sir, does the government support the destruction of these allegedly cocaine-laden boats that are moving from Venezuela?
What kind of boat?
Drug-laden boats. The United States has destroyed at least 3 such boats in the last few weeks.
Well.
Does government support this kind of action?
I don't think the United States government, when they destroy these boats, seek to get Todd or Omar, the chief of staff, to seek permission to do it. The United States of America has defined its policy on drug dealing. They have made it the centerpiece of their border policy. It's not new. President Trump, before he became president in the campaign, said the countries that support drug dealing or that support the trafficking of drugs or the movement in drugs through their borders will face enhanced scrutiny. I recall as soon as they got into office, the new government, they had this engagement with Mexico. They put a lot of restrictive measures against Mexico, including a tariff, a huge tariff. They had engagements with the president of Mexico, and they worked out an arrangement to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States from the Mexican border. The same thing was done with Canada. Now, the United States has said Venezuela is a major source country for drugs leaving this hemisphere and going into the United States of America. They've said that they will destroy any drugs that they've defined a policy as to how they will fight that. That's a matter for the United States of America and Venezuela. They don't need our support for their drug enforcement or policies. That's like me commenting if Kenya does something with Tanzania, and I'm asked about whether I support it in Guyana. I know, why would I be getting into their business? When you ask us whether what are our policies in Guyana, then I can explain to you about that. But we have no. That's their stated policy globally, a U.S. policy.
But I was trying to look at it from the perspective of human rights, the killing of people who, without any trial or anything like that, and it's happening in the Caribbean waters with a heavy military buildup, which the Caribbean is being defined as, well, there's a stated objective by the region of which Guyana is a part, that should be a zone of peace. But we have a heavy military buildup.
Yeah.
Innocent people are being killed in the process of fighting drugs. So that's why I'm asking whether Guyana supports this in the context of this whole question of the region being a zone of peace.
No, the zone of peace, it's Venezuela that has been disrupting the region as a zone of peace. It's Venezuela that threatened to annex our country, a significant part of our country. Venezuela didn't know that that would affect the climate of peace in the region. It's Venezuela that has threatened military action against Guyana several times. Venezuela that has been engaged in provocative action against Guyana, sending vessels into our waters. So the only people who are disrupting the peaceful coexistence of the countries in our region has been Venezuela, not Guyana.
And the matter of the purchasing of rice and paddy.
Oh, I know the Ministry of Agriculture has been examining this matter. Globally, a lot of rice has been dumped on the market, so the prices plummeted. That is why even when we were campaigning before the elections and when they had another issue associated with the intake of rice, we mentioned that there's, in some communities, we have to be able to build storage facility and drying facilities. If the farmers only have a window of 1 week from cutting the rice, the paddy, to selling it, after which it goes bad, they are subjected to the capacity for intake of that rice. So if the millers have limited capacity to take in all of that paddy, then the paddy could spoil. So for example, if one miller said to me, I can only take 10,000 bags in a day, but you had 28,000 bags being cut per day in that region. So what will happen with the other 18,000 bags? You have to find other people who can take the rice in within this short window from the paddy, from the time it's cut to the time it spoils. So that's one thing. Two is that the farmers have no bargaining power because they have to sell the paddy in this short window, and they have to conclude an agreement at that point in time. So one way of supporting the farmers is to ensure that you have adequate intake so they don't suffer spoilage, and two, that they have a longer period in which they can own the paddy so they can negotiate for higher prices. And that, the only way that can happen is if the government invests in drying and storage facilities for the farmers. And so we made a commitment that we will be looking at that in the Essequibo Coast and some other areas where you have a lack of intake capacity and drying facility. And that's one way of addressing, it's a systemic way of addressing this problem with paddy. Because right now, because of the new variety we have, and because of better weather and crop husbandry and all of that, we're getting massive output. Last year I think we produced the most paddy ever in our history. Well, I think this year too we're on a record-breaking sort of output. And so that's one end. On the other hand, we have to, on the demand side, we have to work globally to try to open up more markets. But remember, we are competing with rice production from other parts of the world. And two, how do we use our rice as an input into other manufacturing processes in Guyana? So it's something that we have to get our best technologists and scientists to start looking at creating a domestic demand for rice that would lead to an output where the rice forms an input into that output, but an output that has a fairly sizable market overseas. So these are some of the ways we have to address this. Of course, we have to continue to support the farmers with the drainage and irrigation, farm-to-market roads, sometimes assisting them with the pesticides and the fertilizer and the seed paddy, because it's tough work out there. So I know the Ministry of Agriculture, Minister Zulfikar Mustafa, has been looking into this matter. I was overseas, so I didn't look into the matter as yet, but hopefully this week we can have a discussion. I know he and the President have been discussing this issue about the collapse of prices.
Good afternoon. Kim King with Guyana Standard. Sir, could you explain the way forward regarding previous comments you've made about promoting greater value systems among the population? You've spoken previously about religious groups that came to you and you had suggested a potential civics curriculum that they should pull together. So what are the current concrete plans or actions that have been taken on this? And on the issue of the firearm license applications, do you expect that before you move to process this backlog, that you may want to work to strengthen current legislation regarding perhaps being more picky about who should have a gun license and the review process in light of ills such as what appears to be a current spike in killings of women by their intimate partners?
So all of those have to be taken into consideration. So that is why if you have a more discerning set of criteria, then you can apply those criteria in the screening process to determine who gets the firearm license and who doesn't get it. But it creates a lot of dissatisfaction. Everyone out there believes that they're entitled to it, and if they get refused, then they are offended. So you have to lower that expectation. Secondly, you have to remove this widespread complaint that, well, not so much complaint, but the feel that you can bribe someone to get a license. So if we can do exactly what you're saying, it's not going to happen over, like, immediately you start giving out firearm licenses without looking at the entire system. That's why I told you the president himself is looking into this. So you look at strengthening the legislation, you look at a more discerning set of criteria, and then is it possible to be more liberal with licenses of a non-lethal nature, So that is where you can meet a lot of the demand by giving people a tool that they can use for protection as they claim, but it's not lethal.
Like what?
They have weapons that would stun you, but won't kill you. Right? That's what I mean. I don't want. This is President Forte. He is dealing with this directly, and so I'm hoping that by raising it here today too, that we have a discussion in the country, because I recall at one time when I was president, remember after the issue at Lusignan, when you had the killing of the young people, etc., by that criminal gang. And I went in the community, and people were saying, like on a railway embankment we had a meeting at a school. I think Saint Sharma came in with a camera, and people were saying, everybody should get a weapon. We should move to a system like the United States of America, where everyone could walk in a store once you're a citizen and you can buy a weapon. And a lot of the people in the community, it was split almost 60% of the people said, no, we don't want that to happen in Guyana. So although they wanted people to have weapons, but they did not want a system where everyone could get a weapon, because the same point some women got up and say, what if people are drunk and they use their firearm? There were fears that they would, use them in a domestic situation. And we've seen some really egregious examples of this happening in Guyana, some horrific cases. So the society now has to make a determination. This is a societal thing. What model do we adopt in Guyana? Should we adopt a model like the US? Or should we adopt, and I'm not sure, I'm sure that we wouldn't get support for that. Or do we adopt a model where people still can find some form of protection if they feel they need it, but it's non-lethal? I think this is the conversation we need to have as a country. But if we do that and then the system is in place, then you have a smoothly functioning system. Now everybody finding out they can get a weapon, somebody bribe someone and get a weapon, or they just, they don't go through a proper screening. I think we need to address this issue. And this is something we heard a lot about, and we intend to focus on it as a government. It has to be dealt with once and for all. And society has to deal with it. Our society. Not just a government. Yes.
Okay. And I'm promoting the greater value systems that
yes. So this is something we believe in. We believe that we have to work with the religious community in this country to promote a better, more civic mindedness among our people, and to be the support for many people who are going through bad times. And the religious organizations are well placed to assist in this regard. So in the communities, almost every community across our country, we have either a church, a temple, or mosque, or all of them in the single communities. You may not even have a government office there. So when the youngsters hanging out at the street corner, they're looking to get guidance. You know, they're just young people hanging out and stuff like that. Often, the place where they get the counseling is from people who are trying to mislead them, take them down a path that is not productive for their lives. And these, since they have a localized presence, the religious leaders, and we know that they are positive in outlook, they should be the shoulder, the support for those young people. No suicide prevention, a whole range of things. They best know the communities. That's one. And two, for promoting love for country, for promoting the fight against racism, you know, national unity. They're best placed within their congregations and, you know, in these bodies to carry that message. I've seen some file cases where people who are living here are unpatriotic, supporting Venezuela. You don't have an option of throwing them out the country because they're Guyanese, but really sick people. And so I hope that before maybe the next September term, and hopefully long before then, that we will be able to get this civic education subject compulsory in this school, introduce it.
Has anyone agreed to work on that yet?
Yes, we are examining this right now. Everything that we promised, we're starting to examine this, and soon the consultation. And you know what? The next thing we have already heard from all the Muslims, the Hindus, and the Christians. They're strongly in support of measures to prevent gambling in communities. They believe that it's a social ill that's creating many problems with the family. That people go to these little places, their shops in their communities, and all day long, all they're thinking about is on the phone, some credit there to put in a bet. And even taking away money from the families. You know, the children home, they need something. You know, to eat or to buy clothing or something like that for the school. And they're busy out there doing this all the time. Something has to be done about it. And we intend to do something about it too. We intend to do something. We've heard strongly from these communities. It's changing the nature of many of those people. Some people don't even want to work. They live for that little credit on their phone to place a bet. I know some people in the public service, they do it too. And there goes. I see some smiles here, but you have to disincentivize it. People can't accumulate money if that. You're going to lose your money. If you gamble, you lose. Don't worry with people who say you win money there. You always lose in the long run. You always lose your money rather than investing it in your family or your future. And so those are, you asked me about the religious bodies, they've already signaled that to the government, their dissatisfaction with this, and they need to work on it. And we have already been, this is one of the things that we've found on the ground too, when talking to people. A lot of families are having huge problems because of this issue.
Okay, it's a bit late in the year. The government hasn't published a half-year report yet.
We just came out the election, so I'm not sure that Ashley will get around to that. But I think he's focused a lot now on preparing the budget for early budget.
Okay, thank you. And finally, could you comment on any potential implications for Guyana of the U.S. government shutdown? And secondly, how do you determine, as discussed in your opening statements, that a reporter is an opposition element or an illegitimate reporter?
Yeah, well, the thing is that for me, it is a pattern of behavior. I have seen people who will invent rumors. For example, Travis Chase invented a lot of stuff. I've seen people, I just spoke about, well, Dennis is not, I wouldn't say he's opposition, but how could you just invent something like that? That, for me, is a sign of unprofessional behavior. But I've seen some people who are lobbyists get paid by businessmen. They get paid by businessmen. They get paid by the Win campaign to carry positive views and to cuss the PPP all the time. Carry positive views. Look at the Win. The entire media corps, some Starbuck News and the others, they hid every dirty linen that they had. And it's going to come out soon. All of that will come out soon, very shortly, very soon. And so it's going to come out. But they hid it. And it is clear, and there is no, you tell me about Nazima Raghubir, who heads the what do you call it, press association.
She's no longer the president.
Oh, she's no longer, thank God, yeah. Thank God. But she never had anything, not a single positive thing to say about the government. Fabricates stories all the time. Imagine the Starbuck News complaining about being denied government ads. I pointed out, I gave the numbers. Kaichor News Chronicle had $206 million of ads in 2024. Kaichor News 202. Starbuck News 170 something million. And Guyana Times, I think, 150 something million. And they went and complained that they deny government ads, and that is suddenly part of an international report. That they are denied government ads because of their position, independent position. Kaichor News got as much ads as the Chronicle. As much, over 200 million. Yeah, not a single positive thing to say about the government in all the years. But they got the ads and they lie to the international media, and then the international bodies then repeat the lies. So it's clear as daylight. They're only deluding themselves. So right now, I think we should have the same standards too. The local bodies, maybe we should, you see, it's all self-regulating here. In Guyana, we don't have like a body. If President Trump was here and he had to deal with the Starbuck News and some of the others, oh God, he'd call them fake news every day. Every day, some of the others would be fake news, pure fake news.
Okay, so on that, the president had said in his inauguration speech that you want to hold the media accountable. What exactly are those strategies that you as a government plan to use to do that? And what are the lines that you will not cross?
So clearly, we are going to expose them. This is what we have a voice to, and they want us not to speak about their transgressions, their lack of professionalism. They're being paid, they're political hitmen and hitwomen, that they're being paid by individuals. Some of them are political operatives working in media houses. They don't want us to speak about that. Anytime we expose that, we're assaulting the media. So we will continue exposing them for what they are, those individuals. Two, we will have to work internationally to point out all of these issues with the international organization. But you're never going to find a piece of legislation in Guyana which says that the government will throw a reporter in jail for what they write or what they say. Look at what the Kaichur News has for 15, 20 years made up every story that you could think of, the lies that they tell. And they survive. And you were from the Kaichur, you know that in the past, both of you, you know what I'm talking about. They got the most ads in 2024. We're still around, they cuss me every day, and they still get their ads. You don't see a single reporter from the Kaichur News not being allowed to a press conference or being harassed.
Okay, and finally, regarding the U.S. government shutdown.
Oh, the U.S. government shutdown, I think I've examined the areas where it will affect people. So, in some areas, like it could affect maybe flights in the long run because the people in the flight control operators have to work without pay. The Army have to work without pay in the U.S., so those are issues. And then I think the patent office, but we don't have many patents there. I think the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, so if we require any permit to export maybe some of our produce, it may affect some of those agencies. But I don't see anything major. I don't see any major impact on Guyana from the U.S. government shutdown.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much.